sure how they're going to unfurl the level of importance, Keaton, that some of them are very obviously important. Some of them, they imply a lot, but I'm waiting to see how they're going to turn out.
Well, this is certainly the year for legal cases, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, yes. Yes. And I'm actually getting worried with regards to how bad it could get. For more on this, let's start off with the daily review.
Straight into it then. All right, okay. With all that, as we were waiting, and we apologize for that, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Roger Gaspard, has dropped the corruption charges related to the construction of the Piarco International Airport against former Prime Minister Bastio Pandey, his wife Uma Pandey, former Cabinet Minister Carlos John, and businessman Ishwar Galbaransing. Now, Sean, the reasoning for me, of course, when you hear something like this taking place, the reasoning is the most important part. And the argument first put forward by Roger Gaspard is that he did it based off of his constitutional powers in order to make a decision based off of probability. And he explained that there was a low probability that the case brought forward would actually hold water within the courts of law. He also explained, and this is the thing with long, very, very long lawsuits in TNT, many of the key witnesses passed away.
Yes.
And in fact, the only remaining key witness has aged quite a bit and is now living abroad. That is the arguments put forward. But he also explained that the defendants, or the former defendants, had a fair argument that they faced, and I quote directly from the DPP, presumed, presumptive, and specific prejudice in the case.
Yes, of course, it's very difficult, and again, this is where transparency is a tool. If you operate in a transparent way, then you could remove all questions of potential biases or corruption or whatever, prejudices, conflicts of interest. You could remove that. The more transparent you look, the less you have to be concerned about those sorts of accusations when you look to make moves with regards to prosecuting alleged corruption with regards to the airport construction. But we didn't have that. In fact, it seems as though they went with the reverse. They went with a gentleman who, well, the question, it was so apparent that it was difficult to get away from it. And then, of course, there is the whole, just the general, if one party is in power and there's investigations into the happenings of the other party, you already have to kind of face with the public's somewhat of just questioning, well, how much of this is just one party going after another party? You're always going to have to clear that hurdle. So why add an extra burden now? Do I think that there was a legitimate cause to investigate the PR Constitution? Yes, probably. Of course, that doesn't mean that there was definitely anything there. And a case, the problem is, I think it's similar to a previous incident where it would have been nice to have the case, the trial, to see all the evidence, to have it heard in court, to get a final verdict so it could be put to bed. This does not necessarily put the case to bed, because when part of the reasons why you're stopping the case, I get it, the allegations of bias and conflict of interest is there. But then there's also the fact that key witnesses have died. Yeah. So we won't actually hear the evidence that potentially will say, well, yeah, this evidence is nothing and it's all political bias, or there's so much evidence here the political bias might not matter. We don't know what that final verdict would have been. So I understand people who think that, ooh, this is vindication. I don't know if this is vindication. I think more like this is an escape. However, to be fair, you're innocent until proven guilty. They haven't been proven guilty. So one cannot in your mind say, yeah, but they're probably guilty. Well, that's not necessarily
Well,
fair.
interestingly, there are individuals out there, if you take a look at social media, who are suggesting that. They said these individuals were guilty as they come, but once again, the court systems in TNT, and given the fact that, as you just mentioned, so many witnesses have passed on, we're never going to hear the truth.
That is astounding to me, that a major case, because I assume this would be a major case, right? This was a lot of money in this airport. It will just end up on the side of the road, dead in the water, because we've taken so long, the witnesses passed away. Not witness. A case could take a long time, have a witness, okay, fine. But witnesses, as in the bulk of your evidence or a significant chunk of it is just gone because it took so long. How?
Well, this is the thing. There are 4 cases stemming from the construction of the new Piarco International Airport.
True.
Right? The Piarco 1 case involved many individuals, including Brian Kwaitong, including Amrit Maraj, including Kwaitong's then companion Rene Pear. Piarco 2 involved a broader conspiracy, in some of which the aforementioned were actually charged with other offences. Piarco 3 involved a former Prime Minister and his wife, Bastio Pandey, receiving an alleged bribe of £25,000, which was allegedly paid by Carlos John and Ishgal Baransing over the construction of the airport. And Piarco 4 involved Ms. Pear, as mentioned, Brian Kwaitong's then companion. You recall last year with the Piarco 1 case, when the Privy Council in the United Kingdom actually upheld a claim brought forward by the defendants, challenging the lawsuit, in which they appealed from the accused in the Piarco 1 case over the decision by former Chief Magistrate Sherman McNichols to commit them to stand trial. The Privy Council suggested that Sherman McNichols should have recused himself from the case because of his relationship with John Jeremy, who was his attorney at law against a land deal involving CLICO. You remember, this entire situation stemmed from John Jeremy in the Office of the Attorney General, from the Anti-Corruption Bureau, of which he created. Now, Bastio Pandey has already responded, and I thought his response was brilliant. I thought his response was, but then and again, Bastio Pandey, Patrick Manning, both of them oftentimes had very brilliant responses. He says, "This has been a burden hanging upon my shoulders and my whole personality for some 18 years. Now that it is over, I have to reconstitute my life. I suppose," and this was the very funny part, "I suppose this was a political prosecution. It seems that they cannot forgive me for building the finest airport in the Caribbean." Well, referring to the fact that Piarco has won the award for the best airports in the Caribbean.
Which, I mean, if that's the case, then I feel a little bit, it's not a bad airport, it's just not a great airport. So I feel a little bit sorry for the Caribbean if that's the case. Piarco, let's just say the project is not as bad as Napa. But I don't think it lived up to what it was meant to be. That said, it has given us some decent service over the last, 2-3 decades of its life, and I hope that we don't see a situation where it would need to have major renovations and overhauls, and then, oh, we need a next airport because this airport is whatever, blah, blah, blah. I hope that's not the case. I'm not looking for more big spending projects. But at the end of the day, what we really needed as a country was a swift, fair, accurate trial to just get to the truth, whatever it may be, and we don't have that. So this is just another case, right, where there will be people who believe innocent and guilty, diehards. You're never going to convince them otherwise, and now we don't have, or we have less of a chance to ascertain the truth, much less of a chance. So, but I get where the former Prime Minister Pandey is coming from.
Let's take a look at this line. Let's examine this line from Roger Gaspard, the DPP. He noted that the accused had a fair argument that they faced presumed, presumptive, and specific prejudice in the case. Again, is he referring directly to the political and perhaps the politics involved.
Basically.
So then there is an admittance on the part of those who are prosecuting the case.
Look, the Vincent Nelson situation, politics, no details out of it. You get a government looking to investigate corruption in the previous administration. You're looking at a potential conflict of interest. You don't need any details. Everybody could be upstanding and of high integrity, but just that act, the door creaks open ever so slightly with regards to the question of some sort of bias, right? Because you're political opponents. That's just the way it is. You can't necessarily get away with that, and I don't think it's enough to prevent a government from investigating the works of a previous administration. But you do need to have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed, so it does not help when the DPP is like, well, there are things here that are reasonable, that put things in doubt.
I think the final thing that I would really pull from this is almost 19 years. Almost 19 years this case has just been standing there. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for the money lost to taxpayers over this case being built and the continued appearances before the courts without anything happen? What does it mean in terms of money loss? But also, does this admittance on the part of the DPP now open the doors for those who were formerly accused to actually sue the state?
Yes, therein lies the other question. When you allow these things to be so inefficiently and ineffectively carried out, well, now you open the door. Now, I hope we don't see the state facing lawsuits, etc., because again, I don't think that this result really determined anything. He's just basically saying, look, I can't go forward. And it's not just because of the perception or the potential of political bias, right? There's also the fact that witnesses died. This whole thing took too long. I hope that the legal fees don't actually come close to the amount of corruption that passed through. Because then you're kind of asking this question, well, what is the point? You know, we lost more taxpayers' money chasing after the crime than the crime itself. What would be the point? And that just, again, goes to show with regards to our criminal justice system, right? And how it affects things. So people, it's not just about putting murderers away. It's also about going after political corruption, white-collar crime, the big wigs. It's very hard for us to have any confidence that we'll be able to deal with situations like this. And then people get apathetic and their participation and the systems are easier to erode as their participation due to apathy gets less and less.
Well, as we conclude on that particular topic, just to give you an update, the former Attorney General and the current Minister of Local Government, Faris Arawi, he is in Miami as a nominal representative for Trinidad and Tobago as the trial for what is being described as the longest running major white-collar crime case, which is the government's civil lawsuit in the Piarco airport construction. Well, he's in Miami as that case moved forward yesterday after 19 years.
He is the one?
He's the one. You do recall the entire situation with
yes,
Reginald
I know.
Lamour and, you know, his standing in the case in Miami.
I guess, like you said, this is year for legal cases and legal ironies, I guess.
Are they cleaning up the system, or and that's why things are coming out?
We don't have time to go into it, but just to mention it, and it seems as though the whole debate with regards to the CCJ, that also is up in the air as the home of the CCJ might be the last Caribbean country. It might come down to that does not go to the CCJ.
Again, we fought hard to have the home of the CCJ. We fought hard to be the home of the CCJ.
And we're not central in the region. We're at the end.
we're not even in the CCJ, but whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on Talking Points, and when we return, well, the conversation continues.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Did you know that polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, is one of the most common issues faced by women of reproductive age in Trinidad and Tobago?
So we see more patients with polycystic if they're obese, but there are the small-built patients who also have polycystic ovaries.
What other treatment options are there available for these girls? What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Force's flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And at a time where we suffer from food insecurity, at a time where there's been ongoing talk and lip service paid to diversifying the economy, and during the period of Lent, where this commodity popularity soars. This is the time of the year when this commodity is most sought after. And I'm talking about fish. And of course, the gentlemen and perhaps women who have to go and catch our local fresh fish. It's when you have frozen fish in a restaurant, the experience is not the same, folks. And I do lament the fact that it seems as though this industry, it's struggling, and I hope it's not on its last legs. To speak to us on it, particularly with regards to the island of Tobago, we have with us this morning the president of the All Fisherfolk Association, Mr. Curtis Douglas. Good morning, Mr. Douglas.
Good morning to you, sir. Good morning to the wider listening and viewing audience, Trinidad and Tobago and the world. Good morning to you.
Sorry, it's the All Tobago Fisherfolk Association, but you're aware of to some extent what's going on in Trinidad as well. But we'll focus a little bit on Tobago. With regards to your association and your members, what are currently right now the biggest issues that have been plaguing you? That's been basically, you've put out the warning that cost of fish is probably going to go up at a time when cost of food is already quite high.
Right. Good morning. It's a whole host of things that is plaguing Tobago fisherfolk. Now, Tobago is an island that is strictly concentrated by basically fish. A lot of people earn their living through fishing in Tobago. That is from Crown Point to Charlottesville, from Plymouth to Castara to Culloden, name it. That is how most of us survive. We don't depend on the government. This is our livelihood. But over the past, let's say 8 years or more, we've been plagued with certain challenges. And some of the challenges that we have been plagued with One, since they would have discovered or start oil exploration in Tobago, things have become difficult. Added to that, over the last year, since the budget has been read, we have been plagued with an additional slap in the face of Tobagonians or Tobago fisher folks as well by the high gas price we have to pay. Now, for years back, we used to go 5 miles, 10 miles, and get a good yield. Now we have to go 45, 50 miles just to catch a fish. And with the added increase, when they take away the subsidy from the fisher folks, it makes it more difficult for us.
Mr. Douglas, I'm just wondering if you can update us before I continue. The price of fish, following the Minister of Finance partial adjustment of fuel prices and what was also mentioned in the budget last year, the price of fish, I'm assuming it would have increased following budget announcements last year. So the announcements that fishing prices are going to go up now, is that on top of prices that already went up late last year, or is this the first time prices are going to be raised since the announcement of fuel prices were increasing?
Since the announcement of fuel prices were increasing, obviously the price of fish would have been taken a bit high. Although in Tobago we would have tried to weather the storm by taking the burden, but we cannot take the burden anymore. It's more difficult because quite clearly, I make no apologies. The finance minister, the government of Trinidad and Tobago did not take time off to consider the people who are contributing in a very, very large market to food security in Trinidad and Tobago. They was very inconsiderate, and they are still being inconsiderate to sitting down and work out a plan for the fisher folk. And I can't speak on behalf of the farmers and people who contribute to the food security. And it is affecting Tobago immensely. Because, we would have wrote to the Minister of Finance, explaining to him what was our situation and asking for a meeting. And up to now, we haven't even had a hearing or a response. But we are going to write to him again and urging him that these things need to be sorted out, because we cannot go on like that. Because make no mistake, after the budget reading with the gas and the price increased price of fuel, obviously, what can we do? What can we do? They did not take in consideration, as I said before, the people or the groups that contribute to food security. Make no mistake, the fishing industry is a multi-billion industry, no. But if you kill that industry, you also kill unemployment. You kill employment in regards to people who go to make a living. You're making things difficult for the people of this island. And also, I speak on behalf of Tobago.
But that's the thing. You've spoken directly, and I know you're part of the Tobago fishermen, but you've spoken specifically to the fishermen in Tobago, and you've also highlighted the fact that you're not getting cooperation from the administrative process of the Fisheries Department as it relates to the gas rebate. What is taking place there in terms of the communication? Because you said if you're not getting any cooperation, I'm assuming, based off of that statement, that you've reached out multiple times, and up until this point, you have not received any response.
Well, I don't really expect you to receive a response given the arrogance in which that department operates. Right? Now, for over 10 years, we've been having setbacks on the development and the growth of the fishing industry in Tobago. It's totally different. For over 10 years, we haven't received gas rebate. For over 10 years, we haven't received VAT exemption. There is a lot of difficult and contrast kind of draconian behavior and leadership in that department. And they have a director there who makes things difficult, we would have wrote to relevant authorities expressing our concern in the term of mischief and misbehavior and corruption in the fisheries department by the director of fisheries. Even the administrator would have closed a blind eye to what is going on. So there is no love, no communication, no sense of building bridges, but instead they intend to destroy, because we are the all Tobago fisher folks, and they are asking us for our banking accounts of our organization. They want to get our minutes. They want to get, there is a list of things they are saying they need from us. And secondly, they said to us, it's only 2 organizations they would recognize. We cannot go forward. We can't build an island, a community, a country like that with those kind of draconian and dictatorship and bullying in public office. How is that possible?
Well, Mr. Douglas, you said something earlier with regards to oil exploration has been hampering fishing activities. And I find that interesting when we see decisions being made for the benefit of the energy and oil and gas, and not so much for agriculture and food production. And I think sometimes we forget it's not just farming, there's also fishing. So yeah. The irony does not escape me that once again, food production gets potentially hit to the sidelines. What is it that oil exploration and gas rigs and all of those things do that hampers fishing activities?
One, when they start to move their rigs, they move their rigs and the rigs cut away our fads and fish pots. Sometimes they do not even inform us. So we could have a conversation to say, instead of moving northeast, move southwest to meet, because we have our traps on our traditional fishing ground. They don't listen to us. The rules and the instructions that come from Trinidad and Tobago are just the recipient of the bullying and the high-handedness of the people that are in authority. Now, when you cut away our fish fads, which fads, let me explain. Fads is what we call a fishing attracting devices. It costs us up to $7,000 to $8,000 to $9,000 to build one of these things, right? And sometimes you have to drop something like 20, 40, 50 of these things. So individual fishermen will drop these things in order to pool the fish. So when you spend $1,000, $3,000, $8,000, $2,000 to go out to fish, you want to make sure that your catch is surety. So that is the reason why we set these things. But when the gas, all of these energy companies comes in now with their rigs and cut away all of our hard work, where do it left us? One, now it put us in a position where we're going to be catching less. And if we're catching less, we obviously the price of the fish have to go up. The price of fish have to go up. And 2, when we make complaint, no one give us an ear. And 3, in case you all do not know, the Bajans have the right to come and fish in our waters, right? That decision was made without a conversation with ATFA.
Is there any sort of infrastructure or regulations to just see to speak to these situations where, okay, who has priority on the sea? Is there? I understand that the energy companies and the Ministry of Energy might not listen to you, but wouldn't the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries supposed to say, well, these are the rules and this is what is allowed, and if necessary, speak on behalf of the fishermen with regards to, at the government level when these things come up, to kind of give you all, to tell, okay, this is what we're going to set up for you all. Have you all been able to speak to agriculture and fisheries with regards to these issues?
No, the thing is the Ministry of Energy issue contracts or awards these contracts to these oil companies. When they do these things, they do not take us into consideration. I mean, we are one of the oldest tradition that they have work tradition fishing. That is one of the oldest. But they have such a draconian approach to things instead of a united approach to growth and development in a country. Is more draconian, and what I say goes. They must have a conversation with the fisher folk, but they do not want to have a conversation because they believe that we are not worth having a conversation with, first to begin. But I'm just saying that the people are the most resource and important people in the country. The people is who carry the weight. And if you starting not to have conversation with the farmers, with the fisher folks, we will always meet this problem that we're having. I don't think they consider us as viable citizen to have conversation with, to work out a conversation, because make no mistake, it is Trinidad and Tobago, and we must be able to work together for the benefit of this country.
Now, Mr. Douglas, let me just ask you very quickly, because we don't have much time left. You said you haven't received a gas rebate for the last 10 years, and the prices of almost everything have gone up within the last 10 years. The price of food, the price of fuel, everything. But, and I mean this with respect, we have survived, thankfully. There are people out there who are suffering, and people out there who are struggling to survive, but the fisher folk in Tobago, you mentioned that in the same line that you don't depend on the government. But is the issue really about the gas rebates, or is it more so that the fact that perhaps our waters have been overfished? And because it has been overfished, supply is low, demand is high, and therefore the price is going to go up. Because this is something that we hear almost at the beginning of every Lenten period, where fish is mostly consumed, given the fact that people are abstaining from meat.
No, let me just say this because I want to be very clear. Make no mistake, this price may not only stand up for Lenten season, this will even go further. And I'm saying this without any apologies. Anytime we're speaking about the energy industry in this country, no media houses want to take up the mantle to say anything about it because they're bigger and they're better than us. Right? We don't have the funding in which they do, but they have the capacity to advantage and to bully, right? And that instructions come from Trinidad, because one energy company told me they only take instruction from the Ministry of Energy, right? So I'm saying to you, if they continue with this approach, things will get worse. And secondly, when you talk about overfish, we have something like about 40 Bajan boats outside in our waters, killing our flying fish. Trinidadians don't need flying fish, right? Right now in Barbados, one flying fish is $1, one single grain, right? But we depend on the plankton that's come down from on top of Charlottesville. And when the planktons come, the flying fish. And with the flying fish, we put devices for them to lay and to hatch and to continue to go on, because you cannot even catch flying fish in Trinidad. Why? Because of the water, the pollution of these oil and gas companies. Okay? And we are trying to protect us, and we are trying to survive. And when we talk about terms of overfishing, the type of fishing we do in Trinidad, you all don't do it in Tobago, right? You all do trawlers. We use pirogues. The only boat that we have in Tobago is the Capital of Paradise, and they look for tuna. So when you talk about overfishing, who overfish? Overfishing is basically on people who invade in our space. Well, and it's about night time we deal with that.
Well, sir, I'm sorry. We're out of time. I will say this, I agree, because I did live in Tobago when flying fish stock more or less just plummeted and disappeared out of nowhere. And I know that Tobagonians weren't necessarily just eating out the flying fish. That question with regards to sovereignty of waters is an ongoing one. That is just one more area that has not been addressed. But I want to thank you, Mr. Douglas, for coming to speak with us. I'm sorry, but we're well out of time. So, folks, when we return, we're going to continue the conversations on some of the, more interesting happenings in the last couple of weeks. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN, your content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. So now we're switching gears somewhat, because technically we're still talking about a Tobagonian, not necessarily about Tobago itself, because this Tobagonian, Mr. Duke, he has continued to make appearances, public appearances in Trinidad. The latest, of course, being with the HDC drama yesterday or over the weekend. But yesterday, what came out is that it seems as though some of the people, they're not as angry as they were when they were potentially being evicted by police officers to get this program for East Port of Spain revitalization moving forward. Now, that is a whole separate issue. But with regards to Mr. Duke, we have with us to speak on the interesting appeal of the man who claims to utilize aggression. We have with us Mr. Richard Solomon. He is a consultant, a human resource consultant. Good day, Mr. Solomon.
How are you this morning, and good morning to all our viewers.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. So, the appeal of Watson Duke, I just have to ask, you know, it's something that you brought up, and I do wonder, what is it? Because it seems as though there are still people who look to him and find him popular.
Yeah, I think we confuse charisma with competence in this country. Someone can be charismatic and really that captures our emotion. It may even capture imagination. It is very attractive, but that does not make that person competent. And I have held very steadfastly over the years that Watson Duke in particular, and he's the person we're talking about now, is really not someone that should be holding high political office or any significant office. This is not to suggest that we're looking for perfect people, but I think it was Maya Angelou that said, if someone shows you who they are, then you must believe them.
Well,
we often mistake charisma with competence. So with that line, let me ask you, sir, is it a matter of us here in Trinidad and Tobago having to be very, very careful with who we choose as role models, with who we consider those in high society, because it seems as though we give individuals power. We may not like their approach, we may not fully like their intentions, but as long as they argue on our behalf for whatever we want, that's it, that's the person we want.
Yeah, and that hasn't really helped us. If you think of us as a nation and you think of our development, as a matter of fact, we could step back from nationhood and just think of us as individuals. You know, I'm not likening the nation to a child, but if you think about children, very often what children want is not what is in their best interest. As a matter of fact, even adults, sometimes what we want is not in our best interest. Think about the foods that people like the most. They are not necessarily the best for them. You know, and I have held, and I continue to hold, that we need leaders with firm hands in this country, not always telling us the comfortable messages, but pointing us in the direction of our development. And so with the last debacle that Watson Duke found himself in, I asked the question, what is it about us as a nation that attracts us so to this kind of bacchanalia, that attracts us so to this sort of sideshow, if you want? Why are we so attracted or maybe even distracted by that? Because that has to say something about us. There is no shortage, in my view, of talented, knowledgeable, experienced, qualified people in this nation to lead. But somehow many of them don't find the point of presence. They don't get the kind of attention that some of these other charismatic and sometimes entertaining, but to our detriment, folks do. So it has to be something about us as a people.
Well, that's an interesting point you just made, because it brings me back to the THA election, where Duke forms a party, and over the course of a relatively short period of time, he goes from a one-man show to a three-person show with 2 seats and 1 appointed councillor in the THA. And then it goes to 6-6, deadlock, then it goes to 14-1, plus councillors on top of that. But the key point is, at the end, at the peak of the success, he's not the guy that's taking point. He has somebody else to take point. And I do recall, it's my impression that for that election, he wasn't that vocal. So that point, I think, is very strong. There's a part of me that wonders, perhaps we're not that taken in by the charisma, and there is a limit.
Yeah, you're onto something there. I would say his advisors, because I don't think that was Watson Duke's doing, to not take point. I suspect he had advisors who wisely said, you are not the person to win this at the front position or to be the flag bearer. We need someone else. And the reason I think that is because shortly thereafter, look at what has happened. You know, there's been a break, and I believe had Farley Augustine and others not been in the front, I don't think Watson Duke probably would have won the way he did in terms of the party that is the PDP. So you're onto something in terms of whether we are taken in to the extent that I previously stated that we are. But let's not forget, this gentleman is still gaining a lot of attention right now. You spoke of the THA, not THA, but the, what do you call it? Housing matter yesterday. And then, of course, we all know of this debacle that took place with him and another person who apparently was prominent somehow in the party or in the politics of that party. So, but people still seem to be focused there. And I think there comes a point in time as a nation, there's some leaders that we have to say, we need to relegate you to a space where you can sit down and consider your ways. But we have to do that as a nation.
But that's precisely the thing, Mr. Solomon. It's a very peculiar situation that we find ourselves in, because even though we may be having this conversation and trying to analyze the situation from a logical standing, and perhaps what we might see as the best thing for Trinidad and Tobago, bad publicity or good publicity is still publicity. So is it that Mr. Duke has really fallen from grace? Or is it that this is really working out in his favor?
Well, I am hoping that we can see the forest for the trees here. In another place or on another frequency this morning, I was opining, or I was remembering our Shoguana's West run, that by-election, where one politician brought a goat in a T-shirt, named the goat, and people had a big laugh and so on. And my mind goes to, is that all you think of the electorate? You see? So my hope is that we wake up. There's a thing they say, all publicity is good publicity. I don't necessarily believe that. I hope this last series of events will relegate the gentleman to a back seat, where he must sit and consider his ways.
But then, sir,
that
same argument that you made earlier with respect to us sometimes mistaking charisma for competence, I sometimes wonder, and I'm not trying to be offensive to Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm also trying to speak practically to the situation, whether or not we as a people are intellectual enough to actually recognize that mistake. Because often enough, the same thing that you would have mentioned with respect to the Shoguana's by-election and this individual dressing up a goat and naming the goat, if other individuals or other parties pull that same thing, those same people who are laughing, who may not like those politicians, will be the first to criticize them. So I wonder if it is we actually think that we're intellectual enough, but we're just blinded by ignorance to recognize these things. But I'm also wondering if we're very hypocritical in our selection, selective thinking, perhaps.
Yeah. I guess if they play to what we believe in, then we let certain things pass. I want to say this. I don't know if it's about being intellectual. I think there's a sort of a political maturation that needs to take place, maybe economic as well. But I think we need to lay hands on people less suddenly. I think we need to allow people to prove themselves and stop selecting leaders who have done nothing, built nothing, created nothing, shown themselves to be powerful, strong. I think we need to be harsh. Honestly, I think we need to be hard as a marker. When you mark the test, we must say, we require a certain level of ability. And ability here is not just about your qualifications and the parchments that you have on your wall, if you have those, but if you want maturation, wisdom, measured thought and action, those kinds of things we should look for, and not be so easily emotionally distracted, because that's what happens. It's an emotional distraction. You think of all these things that come up that people seem to be distracted by, and they are all playing to that middle mammalian brain. Well, they don't play to the cortex, the neocortex at the front. They play to that middle brain where all these emotions arise, and people forget to think. I think
we've seen this before. For the sake, I won't necessarily directly give the reference, but we've seen this before, where you have somebody who's aggressive, right? Say, I'm going to fix the system. And people who do not trust in the establishment, right? The emotional, like the establishment isn't doing enough. The establishment isn't doing enough for me. So I want to go with an outsider. I want to go with someone with different energy, with a different approach, who's going to be aggressive. And to some extent, you don't have to be an aggressive person to be more aggressive or to have more energy, to have more urgency. They want to see more urgency. And perhaps we mistake this naked, sometimes reckless aggression with urgency. But we've kind of seen this before somewhere else. And I could see where now what you just said with regards to the emotional appeal to people. The thing with Mr. Duke, though, is we could say that this party and that party haven't accomplished much, because that's what a lot of the detractors about the political parties say. But to say that Mr. Duke is going to be the solution, I would argue that he has not even lived up to the barest minimum of the promises he gave to the people of Tobago when he was involved in the 14-1 victory.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, and there, I mean, we could go back to the PSA and see what happened or what did not happen at the PSA. There were no audited accounts of the PSA for his tenure from what we are told in the public domain. I mean, that's enough to tell you something about his leadership, you know. So I think we need to get to a place where we stop giving people claims to fame. I think we need to get to a place as a nation where we realize there are real issues to be solved, and not all of them are going to be solved by comforting words. I think about John Pombe Magufuli from Tanzania. He's now passed, but not necessarily the smoothest leader, but he got things done. He was nicknamed the bulldozer because he would push through. And I think Trinidad and Tobago, we've had a pretty smooth ride. We've had money for a long time. I don't think we know what to do much with it. The weather is afraid of us. We're located in a favorable place. We have a lot going for us, but I think we need leaders with vision who are prepared to make the hard decision and who will not always kowtow to what the people want, how the people want to be cuddled, and how the people want to feel.
So, you know, you forgive me, we only have about 2 minutes left, but I hear you, and I think we as a people give these individuals a certain degree of power. And for a moment, I think let's give Mr. Duke some credit, because I think that he's a brilliant individual from the point of view that he knows, he recognizes, and he understands that here in TNT, as soon as there is adversity, the individual who comes out, as you just mentioned, like a bulldozer, with the loudest mouth and perhaps the biggest amount of energy, the people go towards them. So let's actually give him credit for the fact that he recognizes that. I think he's brilliant, and that is precisely why he has still remained relevant today. So it's really people who are giving him the power.
I want to agree with you. People are giving him the power. I want to give, and I'm going to go with you on this. Let's give him credit for knowing how to work the system, how to exploit our weaknesses as a people. We are still politically immature. We are still economically immature in terms of our thinking as a people. We still do not imbibe the level of wisdom that is required to build this nation, many of us, and therefore we create the cracks and the opportunities for these sideshows to become the main stage. So yes, he knows how to work the system, and if you want to give him credit, okay, let's give him credit, but let's give him credit for what it is, knowing how to work the system. However, that is not going to help us build a strong nation, and therefore the call must be to people of Trinidad and Tobago to wake up, to mature up, to be able to see these things for what they are, take a back seat, sit for a little while, think about it and say, no, that's not what we need, because I can tell you for sure that is not what we need. Straw men and women will not build this nation. Straw men and women will not build this nation.
I think you're going to be on Talking Points a lot more often, sir. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Folks, we have to break for news on the hour. When we return, we will open up the phone lines to hear from you, the viewers. Stay tuned.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. IDB focus on climate resilience. THA Chief Sec hopes to put Tobago on world map. Couva man killed during alleged shootout with police. And internationally, more than 340 migrants found in truck trailer in Mexico. Now for the details. Newly installed IDB president says the focus right now is on climate resilience. He spoke at the IDB's consultation with IDB governors at the Hyatt on Monday.
That we should be motivated and inspired to do more in this new phase. Last year, the IDB group approved almost 1.2 billion for the Caribbean countries. I'll tell you that that's more than double the previous year and 4 times pre-pandemic levels.
THA Chief Secretary Folly Augustine is hopeful that the trip to Germany for the ITB Berlin Travel Trade Show would create greater world exposure and opportunities for Tobago.
What we hope to achieve is that this time around, we will get more results than we have had in previous years. Already coming out of London, we are seeing a small uptick in terms of arrivals. Condor is here and doing well, better than Virgin was doing, that we terminated previously. This week, the contracts came through for the THA to review, to look at for signing off with Scandinavia so that we could have direct flights from the Scandinavian region.
A Couva man has been shot and killed in an alleged shootout with police. Reports say 36-year-old Kiel Williams of Grant Street Extension, Couva, was shot dead as officers attempted to search his premises. The incident occurred around noon on Monday. Reports say the man pulled out a rifle and fired several shots at the police, who returned to fire. Williams was taken to the Couva hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries. In international news now, Mexican officials have found more than 340 people in an abandoned truck trailer in the state of Veracruz, including 103 unaccompanied minors. The migrants were from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Ecuador. It is one of the biggest recent discoveries of migrant children traveling through Mexico. All appeared unharmed, and the trailer had fans and ventilation ports, officials said. The driver's whereabouts are unknown. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Hi guys, this is Vanna Bigford inviting you to Woman Power, a wonderful show celebrating women. Come out in your numbers. It's on March 8th, 2023 at Napa. It features a wonderful, wonderful cast. Come out and share energies with us as we celebrate women on International Women's Day.
The network of NGOs for the advancement of women and the Mayor of Port of Spain, Joel Martinez, presents Woman Power.
So let me tell you about real woman.
International Women's Day, Wednesday, 8th March at the Napa Auditorium. Come and enjoy Vonnet Bigford, Joanna Chuckery, Mavis John, Alicia Jagasaw, Sharda Patasa, and Patrice Roberts. Special guest, David Rudder. Your host is Penny Gomez. Showtime, 7 p.m. Special reserve, 300. General admission, 250. Early bird tickets, if bought by this Saturday, March 4th. Cost $25 less. For more info, call 678-7549.
Welcome back to Talking Points, and thank you very much to Mr. Denise Martin for news on the hour. That was a very interesting conversation that we just had with Mr. Solomon.
Future conversations that we would like to have, hopefully we will have, especially with elections, local government elections coming up soon.
But I also think that though there was a focus on Mr. Duke, a lot of the answers really, and a lot of the conversation surrounded generally who we are and what we are as a people, how we think and approach situations, and specifically the individuals. If you really know how to play on the emotions of people and play the system, then certainly you are going to gain prominence here in TNT.
One could argue that's what politics has become. And Mr. Duke, he's just one politician doing it his way. The other politicians, they might not do it his way, but they'll have their own ways, and to some extent it might not be as bad, it might be worse. With regards to the ride that they take the people for, to be fair, though, we see this across the world, from first world to third world. It seems to be like a basic human thing that politics has now been more and more, and even in history you could look at it, and it's probably happened in history, take advantage of the emotions of the people, rather than, we like to think that we care about facts and we care about statistics and we care about truth, but you know, you get an emotional message out there and it's going to railroad and do a lot to get people winning elections.
Well, let's hear from you, the viewer, now, where you can share with us your thoughts and opinions. Let's open up the phone lines. Join the conversation. Join Sean and I this morning on Talking Point. Only ask that you be mindful of the time of your contribution. Please don't be too long, and do not call in at the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and even the very, very final. You know, just call in right now and make your contribution. Your voice can be heard. But as you know, we're celebrating International Women's Day, and with that, I'm going to ask you a question. Yesterday I asked who was the first female elective to the Legislative Council, and somebody answered correctly with Audrey Jeffers. This morning I'm asking you, who was the first female pilot hired by BWIA? Who was the first female pilot to fly with BWIA? If you know the answer, call in on Talking Point and please give it to me. And if you don't want to call in, then go to Facebook, comment on Talking Point's live stream, give us the answer, and you could win a snow mint. We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let me first comment on that topic of the collapse of that case, giving up that case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Trinidad and Tobago is really not a real place. We have had that case has been in the court for 18 years, right? That case has been in the magistrate court because in the preliminary inquiry it never reached the high court. For that case to be in the court for 18 years, it would have had to be stood down a minimum of 3 times a year. So that would have come up and then been stood down and stood down and stood down. So something has to be fixed in the judiciary. The judiciary has to be accountable. Even though they are separate arm of the state, they need to be accountable. Mm-hmm. Any situation where, they would have brought challenges and stuff within that time. But in the case in the U.S., Mr. Gutierrez and they who were also charged in the U.S. went to jail. They were tried, went to jail and come out of jail and died in some instances.
Mm-hmm.
And we still milling around in the mud here. Something has to change about that, gentlemen.
Yeah.
We have to make our judiciary, they have to start to be accountable. And the Chief Justice and they have to take some responsibility for this thing. It is so frustrating to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you for your contribution. Just to remind you of the question, if you can answer it, who is the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago and by extension to fly for BWIA? Caller on the line with us from Kirap. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hello, morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I want to say good program as usual.
Thank you.
The guy in the grey suit, you're looking 10 years younger. You take off 10 years. Anyway, I want to say a country get a government they deserve. Remember you all spoken about Dr. Watson Duke and the politics internationally, how they ride on the back of the populists. If the populists allow them to ride on their back, the populists allow them to ride on their back, so they take advantage of how the people think. You know that?
Yes.
In this country, they can only do that based on how the people think. They get up and does nothing. They protest. They doesn't protest if bread go up by $5. They go and buy more bread. If chicken go up, they go and buy 4 more chicken. You think? So they ride on the back of the populists, but the populists allow them to do it. Right? So I won't say much on that. We know that. I want to congratulate the guy in Tobago, the fisherman who was speaking. I worked with the police marine branch for years, till they closed it down in 1989. I was in Tobago from 85 to 89 when they shut it down. We used to lock up the Venezuelan and the Bajan for fishing in Trinidad and Tobago waters. So I can't remember what year they brought that arrangement with Barbados, which was very foolish. to allow them to fish in Tobago waters. You think? You have 200-mile exclusive zone. They shouldn't be in the waters at all fishing, because Barbados flying fish have been depleted and they was coming in Tobago waters to catch the fish in Tobago. Tobago had more flying fish than Barbados. As a matter of fact, they say Barbados was always catching Tobago flying fish and go back Barbados and say Barbados is the land of the flying fish, which should barely be Tobago, because they should be coming into Tobago water and catch most of the fish. So I don't know who made that arrangement, which I feel was very foolish. And one more thing I wanted to talk on, oh God, like it's slipping me. I had one more thing to talk about, Watson joke. Or the airport scenario.
Quick.
The airport scenario had 4 parts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This Basil Pandey and his wife scenario where you could say they win the case. That is just one part. It had people in America made jail. Made jail for their part because the American authority, the judicial system of their works. So we here, we had to blame the judiciary here, because when the police do their part, it's up to the judiciary to do their part. How some could stay in the magistrate court for so long? Yeah? It was applied. It was deliberately implemented for that to happen. I know they both.
All right, caller, thank you.
They had no evidence and they had the.
All right, caller.
Sorry, State.
We have a call. We have a call on the line. Just want to say, and that's why the current commissioner, she has an uphill battle. It's not just the police that has to be fixed. It's a lot of other things.
Well, there's nothing to fix in the judiciary. The judiciary needs to be fixed. Call on the line with us from Mount Lambert. Good morning, caller.
Okay, the name of the pilot is Grace Anthony.
The name of the pilot is who?
Grace Anthony.
The first female pilot?
Correct.
All right, okay, thank you very much. And you're absolutely correct.
Anything else to say, caller?
No, I'm actually glad he answered the question. The first female pilot for BWI, also known as Caribbean Airlines, well, now known as Caribbean Airlines, was Grace Anthony Rose. She was a former flight engineer. She became the first pilot for the BWIA in 1985. Now, that you've answered that question, who can tell me who is the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago?
Oh,
right. So the first female pilot for BWIA was Grace Anthony Rose. Well done, caller. Come down to our studios. We'll meet you. You'll have a snowman.
Keaton will buy you a snowman.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. And but if you can call in, if anybody out there can call in and now tell me who is the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago.
Not the same thing, I assume.
It's not the same person.
The numbers are on your screen. Call it. It doesn't have to be what we spoke about today. Although, some of these stories, I am besides myself. As Keaton pointed out at the top of the show, it seems like the year of legal matters. And I guess, or legal cases. And I guess you should say, going wrong.
I am besides you. How are you besides yourself?
I am besides myself with how some of these stories are unfolding. Because yes, as two of the callers pointed out, America handled the matter. So ironically, we do have where, there's the potential for political bias there, so that's fair. But then now, with regards to the individuals who were involved in the states, they were prosecuted. Their guilt does not automatically mean that the people in Trinidad are guilty. But it does send smoke, which again brings us to the point where it would be nice to get to the truth and not have everything just up in the air.
I'm just wondering, we had raised something earlier. We didn't get to go into detail today. Hopefully we can get to go into detail another day. And I'll tell you why. We have a caller with us from Dabadi. Good morning, caller.
Very pleasant morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Lovely program as usual. And day after day, I don't know if you want to call it propaganda, bacchanal, what's happening in Trinidad, and it's being disclosed every day. But in 2 words, it's poor governance. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you all report to the owner of the station, but I've been making a request for months now that you stop looking at the problems and start looking at the solutions. Mm-hmm. You all have the capacity you have callers who have the capacity that are willing to help out their country. Let's see if we could really do something about it now. Justice and good governance. My mantra is that you all are the future of the country, the young people, and I think the answers lie with you all. So I'm requesting this morning that something be done with respect to the solutions and not just the problems that are emanating on a daily basis. Thank you, and you'll have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Golo.
Well, with regards to solutions, the short answer is very simple. And with regards to governance, I think, and our guest just before the news break, he also brought it up, the population and who we vote for. To some extent, and I've said this more than once, the politicians act in a manner to get voted in. So we give them, the collective we, give them the signals, do this to get voted in. If we didn't, Keaton, they would change their behavior to optimize to win elections.
I will disagree with you on one point, not to some extent, to the full extent.
Okay.
Right? And the reason why I say it is because, Kola, you asked for solutions. The very first solution to help Trent to be able to have a better future and a better island for the people that live here and call it their home is for the people and their mindset to change.
Yeah.
That is the very, very first thing. You see, and for as long as people are not independent in their thinking or don't feel as though they have the power to think on their own, they have to look up to these individuals for guidance. We are going to be lost people. No. Hear me out on this for a moment. I'll tell you after.
We have a caller?
I wonder if he has the credit. Good morning, caller from Mount Lambert.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
You're back on here?
Yeah, okay. The first female pilot comes to the first female pilot comes to mind is Wendy Yao Ching.
All right, caller. Unfortunately, you got it wrong this time. She's the first captain of BWIA. And she's also the captain that led the first all-female flight for BWIA. But nonetheless, good for raising Wendy Yao Ching. She's the first captain of a BWIA flight. She's not the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago, though. We have to go back many years.
As in a national?
Yeah. All right? Not just a national, for Trinidad and Tobago, but...
Or somebody residing here.
Yes. So, but
maybe I gave it away.
Good guess. All right. Thank you very much. So, the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago started flying in 1948. So, I'm going to give you that hint. But thank you very much, Cole. Anyway, when I say hear me out here, we have a situation in this world right now where you have a lot more individuals who are liberal in their thinking.
Yes.
Right? And to a certain extent, this is where there could be an issue or clouded judgment. These individuals who may also be a lot more liberal in their thinking and take these approaches also come up sometimes, I think, with the most stupidest trends of thoughts. Like, I don't know if recently you heard how they're changing some Roald Dahl books, right? For simple little things like reference to a black door. So the thing that I'm trying to get at is you don't want people to be dependent upon the government for absolutely everything. You want people to be a bit more independent in their thinking and break out of this mindset and their mold. Speaking specifically to Trinidad. But at the same time, if younger people in Trinidad and younger generations try to do that, as we are seeing, but then break out of this mindset and mold that is Trinidad and Tobago and start following trends from abroad, as you would have seen taking place, then we're going to have a whole different issue.
The thing, though, that's interesting, trends from abroad don't always translate well here because our politics is not separated between conservative thinking and liberal thinking. in all of our parties, there's some degree of conservatism and liberalism. And one could argue close to 50-50. It's hard to say this party is more conservative.
All politics is separated by race.
Yeah, like whatever sounds good, that's what politicians are for in this country. And to be fair, to some extent, even when you have formal conservative and liberal, really and truly, that's what it is in the States as well. Because right now, conservative issues are being taken up by liberals and liberal issues are being taken up by conservatives. It's all over the place. So one could argue they're coming closer to us than we are getting closer to them. But I think the key point that you made there, that has to be done with regards to people being able to be more independent in thought and critical thinkers. Because that's who determines the leadership, right? If the buck stops at the prime minister as the head of the government, he's not the one telling person on the ground how to do their low-level job in the government when they interact with the public and upset people with their attitude and their lack of customer service. Prime Minister can't like literally micromanage every single person, but we still say the buck stops at him. Well, who picks the government? The voting public. So the buck, to some extent, has to stop at us. And the only way we're going to really see a change is if we look to seek a change, to choose a change. And if we don't, and we end up with the same thing that we've always had, but we keep complaining with the same complaints that we always had, as Albert Einstein said, that's insanity.
I think we have a caller on the line with us. Hello, good morning, caller from St. Anne's.
Good morning.
Morning.
I can't remember her first name, but I believe it is something de Cabral.
You're correct. You're correct.
Her father was the mayor of Port of Spain.
Yes, yes. Alderman George Cabral.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much. So the first...
Well,
go ahead.
I have an advantage.
Why
because on my father's side, her niece was his sister-in-law.
Oh, well then guess what? You win half a stowment. Ain't any holding. Thank you very much, caller.
I enjoy your show. Thanks much.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you so much, caller. So yes, the first female pilot in Trinidad and Tobago and by extension the Caribbean was Isabella Ribeiro de Cabral. She was born on the 11th of March 1911 and was the daughter of the former Port of Spain mayor, Alderman George Cabral. Ms. Cabral confined herself to fighting on the home front, giving valuable aid to many in social activities. After the war, she resumed training facilities in 1947, using mostly ex-Royal Air Force pilots who had been trained here in Trinidad. She began her training for a pilot's license, and after successfully passing the qualifying test of 3 hours solo flight on her very first attempt, she received her license in 1948. Not to be outdone by her husband Frank, she's like, no, I'm not having this from you. She obtained a license 1 year, 1 year earlier. Isabella's instructor was former RAF pilot Neville Pereira. She was soon followed by Yvonne Lang, daughter of Maurice Lang, the builder of the original Piarco International Airport. So yes, well done, caller from St. Anne's. You've won yourself half a snowman only because you had an advantage. But thank you.
I want to pose a question to you, because I do find it interesting. When you read up on history, Roman history, and to some extent, history in the 1800s, politics does not seem that dissimilar to what it's like now. Of course, now we have all of these modern terms and concepts and ideologies that's making it different, right? But I do wonder if to some extent, past generations, they understood perhaps maybe you could say simple truths, but lessons that were hard fought and won and passed down. But then when things like the internet came and we take it for granted, well, yeah, those lessons were for then, but this is a new age and we have to think of new things. But we've really just forgotten simple, basic human principles and truths with regards to how to better society and work towards something. And now we're just kind of in a wayward mess, as we don't really know what our principles are anymore, because we're still in this, new internet, shiny things.
Well, you see, Sean, the thing is, you're right in the sense that politics does not seem much different, but the systems are different in the sense that we have a choice. We actually have a choice. You recall centuries ago, people did not have a
choice. Well, I mean, I'm talking about like the Roman Republic and parliamentary England, yeah.
I am making specifically is that people here in TNT, and I raised this when we were speaking to Mr. Solomon, is that you have to be absolutely careful who you choose or who you consider to be a role model.
Yes.
Put it this way. You're seeing the fights taking place in schools now. Look at the fact that police had to be called to one school to try and stop a fight. You're seeing fights taking place on the street. The level of ignorance, the level of impatience, and the derogatory behavior of some, really, it makes you wonder, where is their mindset at? And by the way, those same individuals would not appreciate it if other individuals were to have that behavior. So in other words, I could get on, Sean, I could cuss, I could get on, I could be vulgar, I could be ignorant. And if I could do that towards you or to everybody in this office, as soon as you do that to me, I have an issue, a problem with it, all right? To me, I think what it is, as the caller from, I think it was from Kirep suggested, as the caller from Kirep or Dawidi, the country deserves a government that it gets. And the people here in TNT certainly have a lot of reflecting to do. They really need to look at themselves. I think people don't understand how fortunate and blessed we are here in Trinidad. 2, how fortunate we are that we actually have a democracy that is not marred by controversy, right? There are people who bring up the fact that the government and the Prime Minister has so much power, and the Constitution allows for them to have so much power that it's not a true democracy. But if every 5 years I have the opportunity to bring about a change, Hannah, I'm not voting for the individual that will be best for my area or my constituency, you know. I'm voting for the individual based off of their party or based off of who I support, whether it be according to one famous individual who has sat on that seat, the ketchup or the mustard.
So now, here's the thing. So we have a general idea about what needs to change, but the details of getting that change, I think, is where a lot of people, because I've seen this before, where that's where we lose our footing. And I think, unfortunately, this is a case where we can't rush it. We can't look for one man to just come out of the wilderness or one woman to descend from the clouds and make the change for us and somehow magically all will be well. If this is a societal problem, it means, and yes, we had gates, but it's not about academic education. To some extent now, we need to figure out a way for society, as you and Mr. Solomon implied in his interview, matures. And how we think as a people improves and matures and becomes deeper, has more foresight, has more patience, not so much quick fix, want to get, immediate gratification right now. I want my grant now, as opposed to what in the long run will improve my standard of living in the long run. So that's a big systemic long-term situation.
And let me just conclude by saying, I don't think Trinidad and Tobago is a racist country. I do not think we are a country full of racists.
Ironically, I had that opinion, but somebody disagreed with me very vehemently.
I don't think that you personally, what I've seen, what I've witnessed, what I've experienced, no. But I think people turn to racism as an answer for all the adversity that we've faced.
Yes. That's where racism, that's where a lot of racism in the modern world comes from.
It's just essentially, you know what, listen, we could live in peace and harmony. We do it all the time. We celebrate together all the time.
Carnival Monday, Tuesday.
But beyond that, the moment we face some level of adversity, or, racism seems to be the answer to explain it all. It's the easiest explanation, so we're going to go along with that. Anyways, and gentlemen, that is where we have to conclude. Thank you very much to all our callers. Don't forget to come to the studio to collect your snow mint. And, of course,
you're gonna make them. The price of gas will be more than the mint.
Well, I can't pay delivery. Anyway, thank you very much to our callers, to our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, today is a good day to have a good day. And should things go good, and we really hope they do, Sean and I, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.